Awesome. Well, we are approaching the 8 o'clock hour. We are here. So I say, let's go ahead and get started. If everyone is ready to go. Awesome. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our National Ritual Celebration Week panel. We are so thrilled that you're here to celebrate our sisterhood tonight. My name is Mary Coulter. I am the Assistant Director of Collegiate Operations for FIMU. And we have some wonderful panelists here tonight that span many roles within our fraternity, each of them offering a unique perspective that I know that they are excited to share with you tonight. And for this discussion, we have come with some preset questions to lead our conversation. And we do want this to be a discussion, and our panelists are excited to talk together and talk about sisterhood, talk about ritual. And this panel is going to be recorded. So if you have a FIMU sister who was not able to attend, have no fear, she will be able to see it later this week. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And it is my honor to introduce our moderator for this evening, our national president, Andy Cash. Andy was initiated into the Delta Eta chapter at Georgetown College. She has extensive experience as a FIMU volunteer, both for the fraternity and the foundation. She has served as a member of National Council for more than 11 years. Before being elected as national president, she was a national vice president for 2 years. Prior to that, she was the Vice President of Communications and Extension and the Vice President for Membership. She was a foundation trustee for 4 years, serving as the foundation's corporate secretary/treasurer. She participated in the creation and implementation of the 2003 and 2013 strategic plans. Andy is the second generation owner of a multi-million-dollar international company and brings that expertise and perspective to National Council. So without any further ado, Andy, please take it away.
Well, thank you, Mary, and thanks for all of your work organizing this. I really am excited about the opportunity, excited to have a discussion with the women on this panel tonight. So, and I appreciate everybody that's logging in and watching, and all of those of you who are going to watch the recording. So I will start by introducing our panel, which is fun for me because I know most of you pretty well already, but I get to share your official bios. So I will start with our past national president, Frances Mitchelson, and you can wave when I introduce you. Frances joined the Alpha Rho chapter at the University of Louisiana Monroe and has stayed involved in FIMU at the national level since college. Currently, she serves on National Council as our National Panhellenic Conference delegate, and she's a member of the Constitution and Bylaws Committee. Professionally, Frances was a university administrator and now spends her time as a philanthropic and community leader, volunteering with programs that support women, children, and families. And in her free time, she likes to read and travel with her family. Next, I will introduce another past national president, Beth Manan. Beth was initiated at Hanover College, our Rho chapter. She's a regional vice president for CLC, the largest collegiate licensing company in the country. She works with 12 universities and colleges and 4 Greek organizations, helping them manage their licensing programs by developing strategies for brand evolution and extension. And she currently serves FIMU as our National Extension Chairwoman. You can see a theme there. Both growth and extension are her passions. In her free time, she enjoys reading, biking, she does lots of walking, and she is an avid Purdue Boilermaker basketball fan. She says that she realized during the pandemic how much she loves getting together with friends and looks forward to someday soon returning to being fully in person socially. Amy Dardy was initiated into the Kappa Lambda chapter of the University of Memphis, 1993. A former National Council member, she is currently a special education teacher for gifted and talented students. She serves FIMU as our National Ritual Chairwoman. So we're very glad to have you on this panel tonight. And in addition to volunteering for FIMU, she's active in her church and enjoys spending time with her family, reading, and traveling. Kendra Pickens was initiated at our Kappa Nu chapter at Lambeth University in the year 2000. She lives right outside of Memphis, Tennessee with her husband, Antonio. She's an assistant principal at an elementary school, and she currently volunteers for FIMU as our National Collegiate Membership Coordinator, which means that she gets to work closely with and support all the other membership volunteers, like our area membership directors. And before the pandemic, got theme going here, she loved to travel. She and her husband love sports, and while watching on TV is great, they have a goal to visit all of the SEC football stadiums. They only have 3 to go, and all of the MLB stadiums, which she says they've only been to a few so far, but that's why it's a goal, because it's a good start. And then we have Lauren Schwab. Lauren, thank you for joining us. She is a member of our Gamma Kappa chapter at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. She's a junior in communication studies and minoring in pre-law, hoping to attend law school post-graduation. She currently serves as Gamma Kappa's chapter president. She loves fundraising for CMNH and going to the beach. Nice to go to a college where you get to go to the beach, and getting coffee with her sisters. So thank all of you guys. I'm really excited to have you here, and I think everybody values your perspective, and obviously we appreciate your service to the fraternity and all that you do. So it's exciting to have all of your different perspectives here tonight. So the theme of National Ritual Celebration Week is strengthening our bond as sisters while we are absent one from another. It's no secret that the pandemic has changed how we interact with each other. So tonight we're going to explore how our ritual continues to shape and connect our sisterhood, even through all of the events that are going on in our world. Are you guys ready? Unmute yourself, because we're going to start with a speed round. And I'm going to ask, what is the first word that comes to your mind when you think of the word ritual? So we'll start with Beth Manan.
Timeless.
What about Kendra?
Connection.
Lauren?
Tradition.
Amy?
Comfort.
And Francis?
Living.
That was good. You guys all had different words. That's a good start. So let me ask, how do you think our ritual maintains its relevance 169 years after the founding of FIMU? And I hope that this just turns into a big group discussion here, but I will start by throwing it to Francis.
Well, thanks, Andy. I can kick us off on that question. What a beautiful time to celebrate our ritual during this Founders Day week as well. I think how the ritual remains its relevance is it changes and evolves as the organization changes and evolves. And we have to meet our sisters where they are. We have to adjust to the times and adjust to the opportunities that are out there. And I've been through several ritual revisions during just my time of service, and know that we have to listen to each and every sister in order for our ritual to remain relevant. But at the end of the day, it is the vote of our convention body that changes our ritual, but the National Council in those interims is charged with keeping relevance as needed.
Thank you, Francis. Amy, what do you think?
I agree very much with what Francis said. I also think that it's unique in that no matter where we are in the nation or what our own local chapter experiences were or are, we all share the same ritual. It's the one commonality that we all share. We all took the same oath. We all share the same creed, and we took that oath that promised to uphold the ideals and values of FIMU unto the end of our days. And I think that that's great, that no matter if you're in the mall or, we don't go to the mall anymore, but no matter where you are, who you see someone, if they're a FIMU, or sometimes it's just even recognizing the quatrefoil that you randomly have on, that they know, and you have that connection of, we know the same creed. We all value the love, honor, and truth.
I love that. I love what Amy said. I was thinking about, like several ladies on this panel, I had the pleasure of traveling for FIMU as a chapter consultant right after college. And I tell people all the time that I would get on a campus, or I might wake up the next morning and think, where am I? Right? Like, what am I doing today? And that was one thing that was great about the job. But I would always have to get my bearings whenever I was on a campus, because everyone has their own campus traditions and things they do differently. But the one thing that was always exactly the same, the one thing that gave me comfort, like someone said during the speed round, was when I put on that white dress and I knew that we are all using the same exact book. And while it has been updated through the years to make it continue to be relevant, we're all still using the same one. And that's the constant. And I think that there is value in that.
And I think from a collegiate perspective, that it is really about updating and making sure that you do what works for your chapter while still staying true to the history and the tradition of ritual. So for instance, like something that our chapter does is, we're not a super religious chapter. So for us, reading scripture at formal chapter just doesn't seem to have the same feeling that reading like an inspirational quote or something to substitute in for that scripture. So we're still, I guess, like meeting the requirements of it and just updating it for our needs.
Thanks, Lauren. Beth, I'll give you a chance if there's any, you're good.
They've all said it. And I especially relate to what Kendra said, because I can remember being at one of the first chapters I had visited as a chapter consultant and having it hit me that, oh, this is exactly the same as what I experienced in my, collegiate life as a FIMU, that it doesn't change. It remains constant. And it is very comforting to know that 169 years later, here we still are.
Yeah, I love that sentiment. And I love, all of us, with the exception of Lauren, who I've just met, I've known for a while. And, we are from different chapters and have very different undergraduate collegiate experiences. But I love that I feel connected to all of you because we do share that. So my next question is, what are some of the ways that you've kept in touch with FIMU sisters during the pandemic? And this is kind of a two-parter. Are there times that you think the pandemic has actually helped strengthen some of those relationships? And I'll ask Kendra to start us off with this one.
Yeah. I think that technology has been the thing, right? And Andy was joking before we started the call that if she had known a year ago what life would look like, she would have built like a Zoom studio, right? Because she would spend so much time in front of her computer. And so I think it's about Zooms, and my friends and I have done a lot of those, my sisters, and even the ones who live in the same city as I do, and saying, why didn't we do this before even, or friends and sisters who we don't live in the same city saying, why did it take a pandemic to get us to be like, let's all get on Zoom and see each other. But I think also things like Slack. And one of the things that I have really tried to do a lot of, I don't have an iPhone, I have an Android. And one of the features of that, which I don't know that you can do on an iPhone, is scheduling text messages. And so maybe at nighttime, before I get ready to go to bed, scheduling text for the next day or a couple of days ahead. So I remember to check in on my friends and to check in on my people, because it's okay for us to acknowledge that this is not the way it should be, and it's okay to not be okay. And so when I think about checking on someone, it might be the wrong time, 2 a.m. or something, but I can schedule that text to go out so they know that I've been thinking about them and praying for them. And that's important.
I agree. Amy, what about you?
Well, first off, Kendra, I'm not awake at 2 a.m. So thank you for not reaching out to me at 2 a.m. because I am not the night out. I got you there. And I agree that technology has been wonderful, but for me, I'm using technology so much at work that sometimes I'm burnt out of sitting in front of a computer screen by the end of the day. So if I'm being totally transparent with everybody that's watching, I have to admit that I have really struggled with staying in touch with people. I have always considered myself an extrovert. Those of you that know me would probably consider me an extrovert because I enjoy being around people. I'm a hugger. I like that physical contact. But I think in reality, I have come to realize that I'm an extroverted introvert. I love being around people, but I need someone to drag me or push me out of my comfort zone, because when I'm at home, I'm just laying on the couch. And let me tell you, from basically March to August, that's what I feel like I did, was lay on the couch because we weren't in school. So before the pandemic, many of the women that I considered some of my closest friends in FIMU were not my chapter sisters. They were friends that I met from traveling all around the country. And during the pandemic, we've not been able to be together. And so we've been in touch less and less, unfortunately. You know, I mean, Facebook and social media are great for that. But as far as like picking up the phone, those kind of things, we have not been the greatest at them. And while at times it's made me feel very isolated from FIMU, recently, it has given me the opportunity to connect with several chapter sisters and re-strengthen friendships that I formed in the early 90s. So it's been both a blessing and a curse.
I agree with Amy somewhat that because I work all day and I'm on Zoom or Teams all day, that I really don't want to be using technology. So it's a good thing that Andy Cash likes to speak by phone. And I know, Frances, you and I just had a date recently and we were both like, let's just do the phone. So, but I do think that it's great that we do seek each other out. Like, I know, Frances, I think you had reached out to me last summer and said, let's just set a date. And so we had a date. And just like Amy, I have a group of chapter sisters that I had not talked to in years. And for a while, every Friday we were having happy hour, from 5 to 6 on Zoom. And it's been great. And I think we really will stay connected moving forward, coming out of the pandemic. So I think it's a great byproduct of what's happened, knowing that you can use technology and the phone when it works for you.
And I think those calls are really important. And I've tried to make an intentional effort to think about some of our older sisters, some of my mentors or women who have been important in my life, to pick up the phone and call them. It's not something I would normally do, but pick up the phone. The other thing, and I'm going old school because I guess I am, I write notes. I'll send a little card. I'll send a postcard. I will send a little happy in the mail. And, for no particular reason, but that's something that I enjoy doing and gives me satisfaction as a way to connect with my sisters.
And
You're
I think
very good at that. You're very, very good at that, Frances. She sent me a card when my husband had surgery, like thinking of you. And, you're just really good at that, Frances.
We all know what it's like to have a sick man at home.
I know, yes, true.
I think it's also very different still being in college, because I know for our campus, some of our classes are in person, some are hybrid. So some of our sisters I'll see on campus every day, and some girls I haven't seen in months except on Zoom at chapter. And I think it's being able to still relate to those women while everyone's having such different circumstances going on in their life.
Right.
It's really shown me something that this past recruitment, we asked all of our girls what they felt this incoming pledge class, like a couple words that they felt to describe them. And something that kept coming up was resilient, and just the resilience of women in Greek life right now, because it's already a big commitment, time, money, everything. It's a huge commitment. But then in the midst of a pandemic, you have to really want it, and you have to really want to be involved and want to be a part of this. And so the girls that we see coming through now and the girls that are still a part of it are so resilient. And I'm honestly impressed with how positive, at least my chapters, has been able to be during this time, considering the circumstances. And there's fun little ways that we like to try and make it a little more interactive. Like, I think at our last chapter we just had, we did like holiday themes. So I like decked out the whole back area with Christmas lights, and I put on a little Santa hat. And we had girls dressing up like Halloween, girls dressing up like it was 4th of July, all sorts of fun things. And just a way to get girls excited and to be interactive and get to still connect when we're not together in person.
I love that. Let me ask you guys, and Amy, I'll start with you because you specifically mentioned this. What kind of advice do you have for our sisters out there that are having a hard time staying connected to FIMU and are struggling a little bit with the physical distance?
I would definitely say you have to, like we all talked about, be very, um, not pragmatic. What's the word I'm looking for? Conscientious in our efforts. We have to be open about our struggles. We have to share with our friends, with our sisters, how we are feeling. It's easy for us to feel isolated, but once we open those lines of communication, I think we'll find that there are more people struggling with this than we first thought. Like I know a lot of times when you're isolated, it's really easy to feel alone. But yet, when you start those communications, you can start to realize that you're not alone, that there are people that are feeling the same way as you are. Um, I know when I first confided with one of my friends that I volunteer with, how I was feeling, how isolated I was feeling, that I was even questioning my place in FIMU. She was truly taken aback. My social media profiles have not given her any pause. I've been a very active volunteer since 2004, but knowing that I was feeling this way led us to some real conversations about it and actually proved to strengthen our friendship. And she just didn't know. It just took us having like a conversation and me mentioning, well, this is how I've been feeling. And I just think you have to be open about it.
And I think, oh, go ahead, Lauren.
To bounce off of that, I think empathy is super important to have for people right now, knowing that, like for instance, in our chapter, there's a lot of girls who it would be easy to write them off and say, oh, you're not involved, you're not wanting to be a part of this. But having empathy and knowing that there's a lot going on in people's lives right now and that everyone is feeling really isolated. So instead of getting upset with people, maybe shooting them a text and being like, hey, I miss you, I love you, I hope you're doing okay. And if you need anything, I'm here for you. I think that goes a long way, just knowing that we can be there for our sisters.
And I think going off of what Amy said, what came to mind to me was this concept of being vulnerable, being willing to let someone see your faults or your failures or your concerns, and admitting that you're struggling. But on the other hand, for me personally, when we look at this connecting to FIMU, how I center myself personally to FIMU is with our creed. And, it's kind of silly, and others have probably heard me say this over the year. I keep a creed on my vanity. So when I get up in the morning and get ready, when I go to bed at night and, take off my jewelry, my makeup, whatever, it's there. And I think FIMU can be a center of looking at one line of that creed, looking at, yes, I may not be with any FIMUs. I'm often not with FIMUs in Pittsburgh, Kansas, or wherever crazy place I live. But I am always connected to FIMU, and something can speak to me at that point in my life based on what I need to hear.
Whoever's taking script for social media, if you could go ahead and quote Frances talking about find me, helping me find my center, and just go ahead and tag me so I won't forget that, that would be awesome.
Mhm.
Also, raise your hand if you just want to be Frances when you grow up. That's all.
Actually, Frances, that is a great segue if people want to continue to comment on that. But I will go ahead and mention my next question too, which was, are there specific pieces of FIMU ritual that have really taken on a special or maybe even a different meaning for you during this time when we're apart from our sisters? And Beth, you're unmuted, so I'll call on you first.
Okay. Well, I think, when I think through, or I read through our initiation or our recommitment or pledging ceremonies, what's always struck me most has been the topic of sisterhood, friendship, accountability. It's all in there. And through our ritual, we're committing ourselves to one another and to our values so that we can get through those times when we're apart. You hear it, throughout the ritual about, being together, being apart. But in a sense, we're always, whether in the chapter or on a national level, we're always waiting for that next time that we're together, the next initiation, the next convention. And we have this mindset sometimes that ritual is for a specific time and place, right? we tend to think I'll experience ritual when I'm part of the group. But last spring and summer with our virtual ritual is hard to say, we realized that we can experience it without being physically together. And of course, we would prefer to be in the same place. To me, it's almost an unexpected opportunity and a different way to look at this topic in terms of accountability. I think in a good way, because we're not in the group setting, we've had to look more inward and hold ourselves more accountable to the sisterhood, to our commitment surrounding the ritual versus kind of depending on the group or the chapter, or the national organization for that accountability to take place physically. We've had time right now to really think about our own individual role in the fraternity, living up to that commitment that is spelled out in the ritual or the creed, as Frances just said. And it's my hope that we can emerge from this time with an even clearer picture of each of us, who we are in the fraternity, our commitment and our accountability to each other.
Yes, going off of what Beth was saying, the joy of watching our secrets revealed during initiation or installation has always been just such a fun part to see someone's face, like when they put it all together and they make those connections. And that's just as strong in person as it is virtually. Because we've seen such changes in our operation and in ritual opportunities, I think it's helped us to really realize what it is that's really important. Our room doesn't have to be spotless. Everyone doesn't have to be dressed perfectly for the true meaning of our ritual to come through. The meaning is not the words that we say or every little thing that we do. The meaning is the sisterhood and the ideals that we're holding firm to. And I think that is coming through stronger than it has been, because I think before, and Lauren, you might want to say something as a collegian, but I think sometimes the collegians are so afraid of messing up ritual or not doing something right that now it's like, okay, let's just be together and enjoy the moment and not focus on all the little minutia and details.
For sure. I definitely think that has been a positive of the pandemic in general, is being able to take a step back and almost, if I had a dime for every time that I messed up reading something out of the ritual book, I would be a millionaire. But being able to just kind of take a step back and laugh at yourself and be like, okay, normally that's not something that we would do. It would be one of those moments where everyone wide eye just stares at the person, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she read that wrong. And that's not how it is. We understand the circumstances that we're in, and that it's like you said, it's okay to make mistakes, and that there's a deeper meaning than what's on the surface level of ritual.
And I would go kind of maybe literal here in the sense of, Andy asking the question about pieces of the ritual that have taken on a different meaning during this pandemic, this physical distance, and thinking in terms of, while we are absent one from another. My mind goes to our memorial service. And I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but I have some sadness in my heart of what FIMU sisters have we lost, that we have not been able to, close that circle, that quadrifoil end of that piece to have the memorial service. And maybe there's a time when we're all together again that we pause in a memorial service or in a reflection to remember those that we have lost. And while we are truly now absent from them in this earthly being. But on a happy note, shifting gears positively, I think Founders Day, it's been amazing for me to see all the virtual celebrations that alumni chapters and collegiate chapters are joining with alumni from across the country. And someone in California may be going to one in Ohio, and someone in Ohio may be going to one in Florida. And that opportunity that, yes, we are absent, but we are together, and we can celebrate that tradition and have comfort in knowing that that's a beautiful history that we can have together.
Yeah, I'll echo what you guys are saying. I know for me, going back to talking about the creed, the thing I love about the creed is it's really long, which is fun when you first have to memorize it, but there's a lot of content in there. There are a lot of topics that are covered. And I definitely find it to be something that, whatever's going on in my life, I can find a piece that speaks to me, that is some good advice to remember, that's relevant, and going back to the word comfort, that I find comforting based on the particular circumstances at the time. So I have a question specifically for Lauren, our collegiate representative here. What's it been like for your chapter? I'm sure your sisterhood has been challenged at times. Maybe in some ways it's been strengthened. Tell us a little bit more about, what it's been like having a chapter that's operating virtually and hybrid, and what advice do you have for other chapter officers out there who are maybe struggling?
For sure. I think it's definitely been a challenge. I would say the first few months of the pandemic were really, really difficult for our chapter. As COVID regulations have lifted, it's been a little bit easier for us, but we've definitely had a lot of obstacles we've had to overcome. We haven't been able to do things in person. Like, for instance, we're not going to be able to have our sisterhood retreat in person this semester. We're hoping for next semester, but if we have to do it virtual, then we have to do it virtual. It's really just, like I said, being resilient and making the changes as needed. But I think it also really provides us with a good opportunity to take a step back and look at how the chapter's been running and why it's been running the way that it has. So it's really given me an opportunity. There's a lot of things that, it's just, oh, that's just the way we've always done it. And so, it takes a step back, and to be able to be like, okay, yeah, that's the way we've always done it, but is it the most efficient way? We have so many different things like Zoom now. For instance, I live at the beach, and we were out my freshman year, we were out of school for a month because of a hurricane. So it would have been nice to have Zoom or other options to be able to meet with our sisters and to be able to, connect to each other. Something else that I think has been our exec board's really been focusing on is emphasizing how we present things to the chapter, especially during COVID. So in the past, things have kind of been, oh, it's ritual, it'll only take 5 minutes, it'll be quick, don't worry. And it's always been presented as something that we have to do, not something that we get the opportunity to do. And so I think shifting our mindset from this is just a part of being, in a sorority, it's something that we're required to do, to this is something that as a Phi Mu member, you're given the opportunity to be a part of. It's definitely been able to get our girls more excited about it, and really explaining to them, I guess, the history and the importance of why we do these rituals and why we have all these different ritual ceremonies. The girls, once they get that understanding, they're so much more excited about it. And so I think that's definitely been something that our exec board has really been trying to do, and leading by example through excitement, I guess.
Yeah, I think you make some really great points. And I would say even all the way up to national council, Francis, I think we've done the same thing. I think we're looking at some of the way we do things, and you think, why do we do it that way? We're not in person anymore. It's going to be different. And I think there are probably some operational things that will, change forever because of what we've learned during this time. Let me ask the alumni here a similar question. At this point, we would have seen each other a lot more at convention, national council meetings, volunteer training, officer academy. A lot of the volunteer Phi Mu experience has involved travel and getting together in person. So from your perspective, how has that volunteer experience changed? How are the volunteers coping and adapting? And how has this changed your experience in Phi Mu? So I'll start with Kendra.
Yeah, I think that the friendships that come from the volunteer aspect is an unexpected thing. I think that people who don't volunteer don't realize that advantage that you get. And I think that I often tell people when they ask why I volunteer, there are several reasons, but One of them is I'm so thankful for the friendships I've made with other volunteers, and knowing for sure that I would have never crossed paths with them had it not been for FIMU and this volunteer experience. And so the other reason why I volunteer, though, is this idea of giving back, that someone did it for me, right? Someone was some variation of the National Collegiate Membership Coordinator. I'm pretty sure it was Andy when it had that other title on council or whatever, but someone did that and had the hard conversations and made the decisions and did the things so that I could be a FIMU, so that we could all be a part of this organization. So it's time to give back. But I think that when you are in isolation from those touches that we get from each other, it can feel like you're really lonely and you're doing this hard work by yourself. And I think one of the things that's been helpful to me and to other volunteers is to acknowledge that. Like Amy was saying earlier, it's okay to say, I feel really lonely in this job that I don't get paid for, because I didn't get a chance to see you in July like I usually get to do, or in October like I usually get to do. So having each other again, and sharing those experiences, but also going back to the original reason probably why most of us volunteer is I have never personally done recruitment in a pandemic. I've done a lot of recruitments, never done it in a pandemic, right? And so I can't tell the membership director at the chapter down the street what I did and how I would do it, because I haven't. But I can say to her, we will go to those meetings virtually together. I will walk beside you to make these tough decisions. And that is how I'm giving back. And that is how I'm supporting. And so I think that our volunteer roles look differently right now, because we're not getting on an airplane and spending our weekend with you in your recruitment workshop. We're not doing it that way, but it doesn't mean that it's any less important. And I think that's the thing we have to keep reminding ourselves of, is that our volunteer roles are different, but it doesn't mean that they're not as important.
I agree. I think back to when I was a area finance director and how much easier it would have been to help a collegiate chapter treasurer balance her spreadsheet if we could have Zoomed and I could have shared the screen with her and pointed at the line with my cursor to look at it. Like I can remember sitting for hours on the phone with treasurers trying to balance a budget, and just how much easier it would be with technology to be able to do that. Not that I want to go back to doing that again. No, do not want to do that again. But I do have to say, Lauren, and so many alumni, I'm sure, are feeling the same way. When I was listening to you, I'm so impressed with the flexibility that we have seen in our collegiate chapters around the nation. I know that I've heard a lot of alumni say, oh, I feel so bad for the collegians and I feel so bad for this pledge class, but this pledge class doesn't know any different. This is their FIMU experience. And as long as we all try to make the most out of what they're getting, then that's all we can do. And I love the fact that you realize that ritual is something you get to do, because I think as alumni, that is something that we miss. And like, so especially some of the alumni that come to convention, that's really for some of them the only time they truly participate in a ritual ceremony. So it was nice and it was lovely to hear that you guys are realizing that it's not something you have to do. It's something that you choose or you get to do. It's an opportunity. So that was very nice to hear.
Let me ask you, Frances, you've been on several different national councils. How has that been different in a pandemic when we're not meeting together in person?
Well, I think it's totally different, because you don't have the opportunity to have those interactions outside of the meeting, to walk to breakfast, to sit over dinner, or visit after something is over. So the personal interactions, sure, we can conduct business, we can do the work of the fraternity, but you have to be a lot more intentional at creating that team. From a national council standpoint, creating and shout out to Andy, who has, just as collegiate chapters have pivoted, Andy as national president has pivoted. Darlene, as our executive director, has pivoted greatly, and our entire staff, as well as our volunteer officer corps, to make this not only survive but thrive during this time of a pandemic. And as Andy said earlier, there will be lessons that we've learned that I think will change how we do business. But I think at the end of the day, we will, there is nothing like gathering together in convention assembled, or being at a Find Your Officers Academy at Disney and seeing the smiles on our collegiate women's faces, or participating in the FIMU Leadership Institute and seeing the growth of those emerging leaders. So it's different, and some things will make us stronger. But I think we will go back to those personal touches, and that's that friendship and sisterhood that we have.
Yeah, I agree, Frances. And, Beth mentioned earlier that for her, one of the most important themes in our ritual is sisterhood and friendship. And I think for all of us, our FIMU volunteer experience, I think also for our collegiate chapters, it is about building a team and working together. And that is not as easy to do when you're not meeting in person. I'm looking out in front of me in my FIMU office. I have pictures of all the different national councils I've been on, and I'll scroll up so you can see behind me, I have an illustration of the current national council, because we have never all been together in person. I will give credit, Beth Manan's wonderfully talented artist daughter, Alicia, did that illustration for us. And I think that is the challenge, but I think I felt it coming together with this new group of national council officers, again, from different parts of the country, different chapters, different ages, different generations. I know that the one thing we all have in common is that ritual. It is that foundation, the oath we made, and that love for FIMU in our hearts. So in some ways, it's easy to feel like a team right from the start, even though you don't know the people yet. And I think that's definitely helped. I think it's made it easier than, if I were in some non-FIMU, non-sisterhood, membership-based organization trying to come together for the first time with people as a team. But I know that's something, national councils had to work on. Like I said, our collegiate executive committees. I know for you as volunteers, you all have your committees and your departments that you're working in. And I'm sure even for our headquarters staff, it's just a completely different environment when you don't get to be together in person like that. What about you, Beth? I know your job was a lot of in-person meeting, your professional job. How have things changed for you?
It's been interesting, because I think initially it's all about removing the barriers when you're used to functioning in a specific way. Changing, it's all mental, and deciding that you can do things differently. So I've been able to meet with all my clients virtually. It's not quite the same, but we've been able to accomplish a lot. The other thing is I was part of a second merger in 2019. And so I had 150 new coworkers to get to know. And I will say that during this pandemic, we've been able to really get to know each other well because of Teams and because of Zoom, and really making appointments, like Frances did, like reaching out to people that I don't know and having, coffee in the middle of the afternoon, or even a happy hour at 5 o'clock, or, just making certain that I'm reaching out virtually by, video to meet these people. I think it's been a blessing, believe it or not. And I would not have thought that a year ago right now, when things were starting to, kind of shut down. I wouldn't have thought that I would feel this way a year ahead, but here I am. And I'm taking away some positives for certain.
Well, let me ask you guys on that note, and we've talked about this a little bit, but, as you think forward, what have we learned about becoming better sisters, becoming better friends, being there for each other during hard times. I will also give Frances a shout out for sending notes in the mail. When you work from home, there aren't a lot of exciting moments during the day sometimes, and going to the mailbox and there's like real mail in there can really be a great pick-me-up. But let me ask you guys, what ways are you going to continue to work to be a better sister?
The first word that comes to mind for me here is grace, and that's also my middle name. But to give our sisters and ourselves grace. Yes, we need to hold people accountable. Yes, I'm a huge rule follower. I totally believe that accountability is crucial, but we also need to have forgiveness, and we need to have that in a graceful way, and grace with each other and with ourselves as we work through these hard times.
I think grace and empathy, like Lauren said earlier, are perfect. We have to remember that we're all coming at this from different perspectives. We have different levels of concern and different levels of anxiety, and different things are going on in different parts of the country. So even though we're all in a pandemic together, everybody's experiences with that pandemic are different. Some of us are still having to go out and work in the workforce, so you have that exposure. So I think it's just grace. It's just encouraging people to participate where they are comfortable, when they are comfortable, and understanding that might change depending on what's going on in their lives or in their community or even with their family. There's some of us that can't take certain risks because we have older family members that we want to protect, or we have our own health issues that we are dealing with. And it just comes down to just understanding and just being conscious that it's a unique situation, and we have to have, like, and Frances, I can't think of a better middle name for you than Grace. That's just perfect.
When she said that, I was like, of course.
I know.
We were like, yeah, of course it is. Of course.
But don't you all think too that, like, pre-pandemic, I think sometimes I didn't reach out to people because I thought so many people are so busy and so crazy, and you're working a full-time job and you're volunteering. And so I know that people have kind of reached out to me out of left field during this pandemic, and it's made my day, to Andy's point, of going to the mailbox or just getting a text from somebody that's totally unexpected. Those are such fun things to do during this time, because we all have the time now to slow down and appreciate when we hear from people that we don't normally hear from.
And I think we should use each other, right? Like, if thinking about the different perspectives or the different experiences and using that to our advantage. And I challenge us to think about the chapter inventory in a different way. We create a chapter inventory when we think about recruitment, or we think about preparing for recruitment and thinking about who do we have in our chapter? What do we need, right? What are these people good at? What can they talk about, right? We inventory all of that. And so I think we need to inventory our friendships in our lives as well, right? So, like, right now in my mind, I know when I need to think about looking really good on Zoom, I need to call Andy and be like, tell me again about that light, right? Like, she's going to give me that. Or, I might have another friend who is working from home and also schooling their personal children from home, and they figured it out, or maybe they haven't, but that person's in my personal Rolodex of, hey, I need to go to this person when I need the thing. Or, we might have friends who've been doing this whole work from home thing way before it was cool for everyone else to do it last March. They figured it out. And so we need to go to them and say, hey, I'm not doing so great. I need you to tell me how you make this work. Tell me how you do this well, because we all acknowledge that we are having to do things different now, right? But just because you're doing it differently doesn't mean that that sister around the corner hasn't been doing it that way the whole time. And so you go to her and you use her, and that's valuable. We don't have to live this life alone.
I wonder, so for those of you that are working from home, because I'm not, is it difficult to find that balance of when you turn work off and you take that time for yourself? I think that's something that a lot of people that are working from home are struggling with, like, and how, and like reaching out, like Kendra was saying, reaching out to those sisters. How do you cut it off? How do you say, this is my time now? What can I do for me? Like, I've watched sisters who love to cook and they've shared some of their baking, and I would love to live closer so I could sample and taste test. But unfortunately, Tipton County, you don't have a lot of that. But I would love to hear from some of you that are working from home more about how do you balance that? Because I think that's part of the struggle and reaching out to people.
Well, I've always worked from home, so I've always struggled with this for the last 12 years. I can't say that the current time is any different, because I think, unfortunately, when you do work from home, sometimes you're in bed at 7 a.m. working, and then at 9 p.m. you're still working. And so you really do have to set some boundaries and rules for yourself, and shut the computer and put it somewhere where it's not easy to get to, and not check your phone, put that somewhere else too. Because it is really easy to get caught in that trap, Amy, of just working all the time and then never feeling like you're off.
Well, it takes such a big toll on your mental health as well. And that's something that we've seen through the pandemic with our chapter, that we've had a lot of girls reach out being like, I'm not doing so hot. This has been really difficult for me. And so for us, putting a huge emphasis on getting those resources out to the girls and making sure that they understand that there are support systems and that virtual therapy is a thing. So if they need to reach out to somebody, there are options out there, and the world doesn't have to seem so isolating and so alone, and that we can still connect even though we technically are isolated physically, but we don't need to be socially.
Let me ask you guys, as we're nearing the end of an hour here, for some wrap up, some final thoughts. And specifically, and this is a big question, but as we continue to navigate these uncertain times, how can we use ritual to continue to guide us to Fivey's ideal, noble womanhood? So who wants to tackle that one first? Okay, Beth.
I'll try it. I think, for one thing, we're not always good at turning to the ritual, to seeking the ritual. Like I referenced earlier, I think sometimes we wait for those events to think about ritual. So don't let the ritual get dusty. Make sure it's somewhere handy that you can access it. But I also think, I know Mary Coulter and I were talking yesterday. Our youngest son, Ethan, was his chapter ritualist for his Lambda Chi Alpha chapter. And I'm just so impressed with the experience he had. He was able to go to his national convention in 2018 as part of the national ritual team and perform the initiation. But I thought what's been even more impressive, because he's living with me now for a year, I've heard a lot through the year of things that he did in that role. One thing his chapter always does is they plant a tree every time a pledge class is initiated. They plant a tree on campus. He went to Hanover College, where I went, and the campus is beautiful. It has lots of trees. Trees are a big part of the beauty of the campus. And so that's their way of giving back to the campus. But they also, the night before initiation, the pledges are in communication with the initiated brothers, who start giving them canned goods and cereal and pasta. And initially, I don't think the pledges really understand what's going on, but by the end of the night, they realize they've collected all this food, and they take it to a family in the area that's in need. And I don't know anything about his ritual. I have no idea what the words are, what they say, but I have the feeling that it has something to do with giving back to the community and looking for those less fortunate than themselves. And so I think we need to consult the creed, the ritual, and look for ways to really live those values of love, honor, and truth. I think there's so many things that we can do as alumna members or as chapter members to really live the creed every day. And so we have to seek it. We can't just sit and expect it to come to us. We have to be in search of whatever that is.
I don't know.
Definitely agree with that. You think about it, you look at just the ones of us that are on the panel, much less everybody that's watching. And we all come from different political and religious beliefs, different socioeconomic statuses, different geographic locations. But if we'll all focus on the ideals of FIMU, on the love, on the honor, truth, we will continue to grow and bond as sisters. When we speak truth to each other, whether they're hard truths or easy truths, when we honor differences of opinion and we do it all through love, you can't help but produce noble women. You just can't.
Were you going to chime in, Lauren?
You pretty
I'll
much
call you
covered
out.
yeah, you pretty much covered what I was gonna say there, but I can't remember who said it earlier, and I think it was you, Amy, but ritual is something that we can all connect over. And so I think really leaning into that and understanding that that's something that women all over the country as FIMUs, that is the one thing that all of us, despite all these different backgrounds, that's something that we can all come together on. And that's something that we can all relate to, again, is super important, and really leaning into that. And again, like you were saying, Beth, that it is something that you have to seek out. It's not something that's going to come to you. So really putting yourself out there and making a conscious effort to incorporate that ritual into your everyday life is super, super important. And that's something that we really stress with our collegiate members as well.
Kendra, what about you? Do you have some closing thoughts for us?
Let me see. I think everything everyone said was wonderful, but I think going back to kind of a little bit what we said earlier and thinking about, I think being inside our homes and having everything happen in one place for many of us for a long time made us feel like we had to be really, really good at all the things. And so I think it goes back to also giving ourselves grace and saying, it's okay not to be amazing at all the things, right? But falling back on this idea of there are people who we can lean into and we can fall back on, and there are faithful sisters and there to support us and hold us accountable to.
And Frances, do you have some closing thoughts?
Yeah, Andy, thanks. As reflecting upon this question, it as I do often, I think in terms of threes. We have three founders. We have three tenets in our creed: love, honor, truth. There's 3 stars on our badge. So really, I probably sum up this kind of closing thoughts in 3 simple messages. One is our open motto, Los Fidel, the faithful sisters, that we have to remain faithful. And if we can remember that under whatever circumstances, that would be number 1. Number 2 is a new opportunity in our tagline, Steadfast and Sisterhood. And thinking about what does that really mean? And how does that impact that uncertainty of our world, but that how we live our life and aspire to be? Because I think we were always seeking that ideal of noble womanhood. And then lastly, I go back to that closing line of our creed and that challenge to us to practice day by day the meaning, spirit, and reality of FIMU. And that in itself sums up, I believe, what it means to guide us toward noble womanhood.
Very well said. I want to thank all 5 of you for being a great panel, for sharing your thoughts. I know there were things that really resonated with me, and I'm sure everybody else out there enjoyed hearing some of the same things that they're thinking, but also maybe, some different ways of looking at it. And Mary, I'm glad you turned your camera back on, because I also want to thank you and the headquarters staff again. I think this was a great way to help us celebrate National Ritual Celebration Week. So thank you.
Well, thank all of you so much. And I don't know about anyone else, but I am absolutely in the spirit of sisterhood now after hearing all of you speak and share your perspective. So Andy, thank you for moderating. All of our panelists, thank you so much for your wonderful words of advice, of wisdom, and of love for our sisters. I can't thank you all enough. And again, thank you all to everyone who has been here tonight and who will watch this recording later on. Again, we are going to post this recording onto the Resource Hub and it will be made available. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful National Ritual Celebration Week. Reach out to a sister. I challenge you to find a sister and reach out to her. And happy early Founders Day to everybody. It's just in a couple days. So I hope that you're all able to find some great ways to celebrate Founders Day and keeping in the spirit of FIMU and of our sisterhood. But again, thank you all so much for tonight. I am just on cloud 9 thinking about all the wonderful things that you said. So this has been so meaningful, and I thank you all and hope you have a wonderful night.
Thanks, Mary.
Good night,
Thank you
everybody.
all. Bye-bye.